Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast, the show where we discuss how you can find, figure, fund, fix, and flip a deal. Well, I'm always honored to bring on a guest onto the show, and today is no exception. We're going to have Amy Thompson on the show, a local real estate expert who's going to talk a little bit more about the recent change to the commission structure for real estate agents. This is going to be a great show. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast. I am your host, Donnie Corum, the Foreclosure Deals Coach, and today I had the honor and privilege to bring Amy Thompson on the show, a local real estate agent. How's things, Amy? What's shaking?
Hi, Donnie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be a part of the podcast today. Things are great, moving and shaking, that's for sure. Houses are still selling, so...
Yes. Can't argue with that, right? The market moves. Sometimes it moves a little slower and a little weirder, but it always kind of moves, right?
Always.
Love it. I love it. Let's hop right in. There's been some big changes in the commission on how agents are being compensated. I believe it's this week in August, right? Where they're taking the compensation agreement off the MLS officially, making it so not only can we not define what buyers agents are going to be paid for selling a house, but also we're not also going to get the historical reference of what previous houses have offered in commission, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about let's start with your background. How long have you been doing real estate here in the local market? Let's start there.
Sure. I was licensed in late 2019, and then I really kicked off my career at the beginning of 2020. Okay. As we all know, that was right before COVID happened. So
amazing time.
Hopped on that roller coaster and rode it. I had a 12-year-long banking career prior to becoming a real estate agent, which was vastly beneficial for the translation of how to help people navigate this process. It really translated well. I was very thankful for the experience that I acquired before I got into my real estate business. And since I've been in real estate, I have been averaging about 32 transactions a year. So yeah, here I am today.
I love it. I love it. So today you're local agent working in that 30 transactions a year. That's pretty good. I mean, it gives you a pretty good taste of the market, 2.5 transactions. A lot of people don't know this, but the average agent still does just under 4 transactions a year on a national level. And it's a little bit lower here. So that's incredible how much performance you're getting done. So good for you. So bringing us back to the topic at hand. A lot of changes in the commission environment. Can you describe for the viewers a little bit what is changing in your opinion? And then we'll go into how you think it's going to ultimately affect the market. But let's start with what the actual legal change was in the commission structure.
Absolutely. So what's changing is how commissions that are being paid to a buyer's agent are being advertised. As you mentioned before, Donnie, we can no longer advertise a cooperative commission payment in the MLS. So that's being removed. In most instances here in Colorado, it's being removed as of today. So going forward, there is not going to be any advertisement of any commission offered by the seller to any cooperating buyer's agents. Now, that doesn't mean that a seller is no longer paying commission to a buyer's agent. I mean, as we have known for the length of real estate transactions, everything is negotiable in a transaction. That's what kind of started this, though, is that piece of the puzzle, that very, very key piece of the puzzle, that everything is negotiable, got lost in translation. And so the National Association of Realtors has established this new rule for all realtors to abide by in an effort to make things more even playing field. Like everybody now has to negotiate what is going to be paid. It does open up the door now for buyers to potentially have to or be more open to paying their agent that they've chosen to hire, which really isn't a bad deal at all. But I think it's important to know that not much is going to be changing. It's just how we handle the transaction. And I think that's what's really going to help define agents going forward. You know, if you aren't, I've already had conversations with agents who are like, well, if I can't get paid as a buyer's agent, then I'm just going to get out of the business. If you have that mentality, this isn't the business for you.
You don't belong here, right? You got to adapt with the time. Like, you know, if a dentist came across hard times and decided they're going to become an Uber driver, there wouldn't be any dentists in the market, right? So I love that you mentioned that, because the devout professionals are going to be just fine. Things are going to be different, but not, I mean, the compensation is still there. And I love that you mentioned that, you know, the buyer now has to define what they're willing to pay their agents. So it's not the fixed, I was almost going to say it, but it was never a fixed percentage per se,
Never.
right? Everything was negotiable, but there was a general cultural acceptance that the buyer's agent was paid 3%, right? So this changed that. It's not that you can't assume that you're going to be paying 3%, but if we can't assume that, what can the buyer and the seller assume that they're going to pay? What do you think the new culture is going to be?
I think it's safe to assume that you're going to be paying something, but it's also safe to assume that it's a conversation that you have with your real estate professional to understand what you feel they are worth. So, and that's the beautiful part of this whole change, in my opinion, is it was so convenient for to become a real estate agent is not a difficult process. It's not very expensive in the grand scheme of starting a business.
Sure.
So most individuals that are real estate agents found it convenient to become a real estate agent, throw a sign in the yard, and the house is going to sell itself, especially in the more recent years that we've experienced and how real estate has gone. But with that being said, now that we actually have to assert our value and we actually have to really demonstrate value and fight for what we believe we are worth, and maybe it won't be that much of a fight, but we really do have to demonstrate what we are worth as real estate agents. It's going to make the playing field a little bit more even. It's going to tighten the playing field here in our real estate markets. So we're going to see less people want to become real estate agents because it's not going to be as simple as just throwing a sign in the yard and the house sells itself. That's how it should have never been that way to begin with. But
I agree. And it's funny how many other industries have already been that way. Like you look at lawyers, accountants, et cetera. There's a defined hourly rate or a per job rate that's defined when you get into the engagement. What was different about real estate for so many years was the assumption that this is what my fee structure is going to be long before we've even had the conversation, right? So I think that's why NAR stepped in and kind of said, no, that needs to be better defined. It doesn't mean that, to your point, that buyer's agents aren't going to be able to justify their value. It just kind of means that they're going to have to define that value up front as opposed to assuming it, which I think is actually very helpful for the industry. Obviously, it's a show about investors, and investors are thinking right now, well, hallelujah, we don't have to pay the buyer's agent anymore. We're going to keep some money in our pocket. Now, I know that's not the case. You know that's not the case. But as an investor who's going to be buying a house, finding that house, analyzing the house is the big part of this, funding the house, fixing the house, and flipping it. What should they be budgeting today for the commission they're going to pay on the buy side to sell the property? I know things are kind of in a state of flux, but what's your recommendation for the number to start at?
Well, historically here locally in Colorado, in our Colorado market, we have established kind of a 6% 6% fee that's then divided between the real estate agents in some sort of way. It's not always clear across the board. It's not necessarily 3% to the listing agent, 3% to the buyer's agent across the board. In certain markets in Colorado, it's a little bit different depending on how that's split. But with that being said, I think it's advantageous for everybody who is going to be selling a house to be prepared to offer some sort of percentage in commission. I think that because that's how the structure has been for so long, that a percentage in commission has been offered. I will say a lot of people have asked, is it advantageous to now, because we really don't have a set standard anymore, the National Association of Realtors is taking that away from us by changing how commissions is advertised, maybe offering a flat fee instead. And sure, that's definitely something that can be done. Everything is negotiable. So you can offer whatever you want to offer. I think it is incredibly advantageous to be prepared to offer something. And I think it's more advantageous to be prepared to offer a percentage because that's how things have gone for so long anyways. I really don't think, like I said before, that much is going to change. We are seeing commissions change already in regards to how they're being offered. Consistently this year, we're not necessarily seeing 3% on every listing that's advertising commission in the MLS. I would say that it's probably closer to 2.5 and 2.8. So we're already seeing an impact. And part of that has to do with how the market has gone, right? Sellers don't have the equity to necessarily offer a cushy 3% commission to both sides of the transaction. So we're adjusting commissions to compensate for equity lost due to how the market has fluctuated. But I think I think with that being said, we're going to see a tighten in how commissions are offered. And I think 2.5% is probably going to become more of the norm here in Colorado.
I like that. And I think, it's good to budget for that so we can plan ahead. It's funny on the listing side, one of the things we do for the students, my coaching clients, as you well know, is when you go to the flat fee with you guys to get the property done. And that obviously makes the analytics a lot easier to determine. We're not going basically what the purchase price is going to be. We're just saying, here's the flat fee. And it's an incredible value considering all that you do to list and sell the property. So you mean the world to us. I really appreciate it. On the buy side, do you think flat fee is going to be reasonable? Do you think it's going to be rational to say, hey, this property, we're going to offer $5,000 on the buy side commission or et cetera? Do you think we're going to see that kind of structure offered? Or obviously we're not going to know until they write the offer really what we're going to give them, but we're not putting in the MLS anymore. So it's kind of like on the investor side, it's going to be really determined by the investor what they want to offer because they can't see it. We're not going to know until the negotiation has started. So either that puts us at an advantage because we can select what we're willing to pay up front, or it's a disadvantage because if they see that's an investor client, maybe they don't want to try to push the property as hard because they're worried about a reduction in commission. How do you think the investor should respond to that? Or what path of action? Just offer the full fee or wait till the offer comes in and negotiate based on that?
Again, I'll say that I think it's beneficial to be prepared to offer something, whether it's a flat fee or a percentage. It's not going to be advertised anywhere. So it doesn't matter what you're prepared to offer. I think it's just beneficial to be prepared to offer something because we are likely going to see offers come in where there will be language in the offer that the buyer is asking the seller to pay their buyer's agent. But with that being said, I think it's also important to understand what it looks like on the buy side. So what the National Association of Realtors has now done is they're requiring that all buyers agents establish a formal contractual agreement with any clients that they are going to be assisting. So the agent has to have a contract with the client before they can even show properties, is how the National Association of Realtors has been explaining it. So with that being said, in that contract, there is a line item that does outline what the buyer's agent is going to be paid and how they're going to be paid. And it's the language has changed in the way that it says that the buyer will pay the buyer's agent. So it's important to know that the National Association of Realtors has defined that the buyer's agent cannot be paid anything more than what they have agreed to with their client. So that could be a percentage, right? That could be 3%, that could be 2.5%, that could be a flat fee. There's both ways of putting that language in that contract. So I think what's going to end up happening is if we're getting an offer as a listing agent or as a seller that says, okay, the seller is to pay the buyer's agent X amount of dollars or X percentage in commission, I think we're going to now be able to start asking for proof of the agreement between the buyer and their agent to show, okay, well, what are you contractually
what you agreed to already?
And know that there's going to be a cap there. And then the other thing too, the other caveat to that is if they did agree to say 3%, since that's what's been the standard, and they're asking for the seller to pay 2%, maybe the buyer is able to pay 1%. So it's going to look a little bit different than it ever has. It's never going to, it's just going to look different, which is exciting to me, but I think it's important to understand the buyer side as well.
Yeah, I love that you're taking this as exciting because it is exciting. It's going to change the face of the industry largely. And I think I think it was due for an overhaul. So it's a good thing. But, to your point, the experts who can display, hey, the reason you want to hire me as your buyer's agent is my years of experience, my market knowledge in this area, my negotiation skills here, right? I got the price from here to here to cover my fee and et cetera, right? So you're going to have to justify, much like going back to the attorney example. You've got one style of attorney that's, he's up $200 an hour, right? And you got another attorney that's high profile. He's like, I'm $500 an hour, but here's why I'm $500 an hour. And if you want
the other reason why it exists, why there's a listing agent and there's a buyer's agent is because of fiduciary duty. It's kind of to your point, Donnie, where a lawyer assesses this expensive fee because they have experience and they're able to navigate this legal process for their client. And that's exactly what real estate agents do. If we're representing a buyer, it's our fiduciary duty is to that buyer. If we're representing a seller, our fiduciary duty is to that seller. So if I get a sign call on one of my listings and I'm showing a buyer a property and they want to write an offer, I have to go to my seller because I have a contract with my seller that says my fiduciary duty is to them and make sure that they're okay with me potentially representing the buyer. But I go from being a coach to a referee. So my fiduciary duty to each one of these parties changes. And I think a lot of people in the general public don't realize that because the media isn't portraying why is there a buyer's agent? Why is there a listing agent? Why would you just work with a listing agent and not hire a buyer's agent? They're not explaining the reason why buyer's agents exist and that there is still value. Again, I will go back to the point that I made a little bit ago and how the real estate agent pool will shrinken. And I think it rightfully should, because not every agent is qualified to navigate the process for every client. And we've seen a lot of really crazy things happen in the last few years that shouldn't have happened. Or shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be normal for some of this stuff to be happening. And it takes an experienced agent to define that value. So I think it's vastly beneficial for people to understand why is it important for each type of agent to exist. And then, of course, that does require some type of compensation.
Yeah, of course. And I think a professional should always be compensated for the services that they offer. But to your point, a lot of people are going to hop out of the industry, especially ones that were focusing on the buyer side. Which do you think is going to lead to a lot more double ending of deal? We call it double ending in the industry, where the buy and sell side is the same agent. Do you think the consumer now, in absence of as many available buyer's agents, is now going to focus more on going to the seller's agent directly? Do you think that's the future of real estate in general?
I do think so. I think naturally so. Some of the narrative that I've already seen from the general public and even clients of mine have said, well, I'll just represent myself as a buyer. And okay, yes, you can do that, but you don't have access to the contract software. You don't have access to the MLS information that you need to have access to. So naturally, the listing agent will step in and fill some of that role for the buy side, because the listing agent doesn't want the transaction to go completely sideways because the buyer has no idea what they're doing. And they shouldn't know what they're doing. They're not a real estate agent. So naturally so. And we have already seen an uptick in what we call sign calls, whether it's from our physical sign that's in front of the house, or they find us online and call us and say, hey, I'm a buyer. I want to look at this house. We have seen a big uptick even in the last few months leading up to this change, more so than we did in even just the more recent years past.
Do you think the buyers are doing that based on the perceived value of getting a better deal by talking directly to the listing agent? Or do you think it's just byproduct of, there was never a world, in my opinion, where people looked out to hire a buyer's agent, right? Like I use cars as an example. You don't, I'm going to buy a new car. You don't go, let me go hire an agent to locate the vehicle for me, right? So is the world just kind of understanding they can go to Zillow? Unfortunately, because none of us are a big fan in the industry, but they can go to the world, they can find the house they want, they can call the number, the sign call, as it were, to get hold of you. Are they just kind of realizing that they can do this on their own and getting more confident? Is it the technology that's changing, or the buyer's needs, do you think, that really altered?
I think it's the portrayal of this change within the media. I think the media has communicated to the general public that you can represent yourself as a buyer in a real estate transaction. And so that obviously provides some confidence to individuals of, oh, what am I not aware of that I could have potentially been doing all along? But as a real estate agent, and maybe Don, you can relate, as a real estate agent, I think about the transaction process from a real estate agent's perspective. And I think, how can a buyer navigate all on their own without me as a listing agent stepping in and helping them at some point in time? Because they don't have access to everything that we have access to. And maybe they want to get it. I don't know. But there's also things that we sign up for as real estate agents when we accept the obligation of becoming a licensed agent. You know what I mean? Like the fiduciary duty and the obligations that we have to fulfill. So it's not easy to do. I mean, so think about it from the flip side, right? FSBOs, for sale by owners. FSBOs is what we refer to them as. People have been trying to sell their own houses for a long time. But when it comes time to actually do the transaction, it is oftentimes the buyer's agent is doing most of the work because, again, the seller doesn't have access to everything they need to have access to.
Right.
And the title companies rely on seeing our contracts. The title companies rely on seeing certain things that come from us as real estate agents that we pay for within our businesses to ensure that the transaction goes smooth. It's not impossible, but it does require some level of expertise at some point in time. It's very difficult to do a transaction just between two unexperienced parties.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is managing the emotion of it, that people don't factor
Mhm.
in the fact that this is such an emotional transaction, right? And you know this, like as
Mhm.
agents, we're not just fiduciary responsibilities, we're also therapists a lot of times. We're
Right.
also dealing with husbands and wives who can't decide this is the house.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this that people don't factor in. It's a major
Mhm.
purchase when you're buying a car, using that example from before, but this transcends that by several multiples. And that's
Absolutely.
before we start talking about home inspections, mortgages, right?
Yes.
The warranty, all the other pieces
Right.
that go into this when we're in the
Mhm.
transaction. So I think somebody who's a professional can help a buyer navigate that. Those waters are always going to be valuable. I just think the commission change is going to make people define that and really document the experience. I mean, I think the agent's
Right.
going to really be forced to, I had this client, here's here's a testimonial from the client, but let's talk about what they went through. And that's how I can justify why I still think you should offer me 3%, that we're going to,
Yes.
I'm going to ask for a 3% commission on this deal because of
Right.
that. Going to the seller side, right? If the seller's got a number in mind, because we don't know what it
Mhm.
is yet, because nobody's
Right.
sharing, and the offer comes in and they want 3% commission, do you think it's going to make buyers, I mean, kind of obviously less competitive if the buyer's agent is asking for more commission than the seller is going to pay? And as a result, are sellers going to just wait till they get an offer with a lower commission? It kind of depends on their motivation, right? Do you think
Mhm.
that people are going to lose deals just by virtue of the commission now?
Sure. Absolutely. I think that's already been happening. So I mentioned more recently, what we're seeing is a getting closer to an average of 2.5% commission being offered in the MLS up until this change. Now that's going to go away. But we've been seeing that because of how the market has shifted. So with
Mhm.
that being said, we have been seeing offers come in where there is language that says buyer's agent is to be paid 3%, even though the seller is only offering 2.5% as advertised in the MLS. And that
Mhm.
obviously does make your offer less competitive. I've had a few instances recently where that offer wasn't selected because we ended up with multiple offers
Sure.
and the language wasn't in there on other offers, making the seller's net higher and more just a more appealing offer to them.
A
So
logical
we're already
conclusion.
seeing that. If there's a multiple offer situation, the commission is gonna be just enough or just another added piece, just as much as prices, just as much as the timing of the contract is, just as much as any inspection language is. I mean, it's just another factor that changes how the transaction is negotiated and then therefore accepted.
Yeah, again, fascinating. It's just a fascinating time because like you said, everything's negotiable. I think the agent was kind of sitting. The buyer's agent got a little comfortable with the fact that that was not a
Yes.
negotiation point because it was just assumed because it was in the MLS, right? Now
Yeah.
that happens, that everything is negotiable. Not only get to provide value up front, but during
Mhm.
the transaction, there's going to be a discussion of they're definitely going to come after my commission, right?
Right.
So we can
Yeah.
defend that commission either by increasing the purchase price somehow to build that in, or
Yeah.
I think a lot of interesting stuff's going to happen on value adds, right? Where the
Mhm.
buyer is going to have to start offering incentives to the
Sure.
client. You're going to work with me, you're going to pay my fee, but here's what else you're going to get because you're paying my fee. What
Right.
value adds are you guys? I know you guys are very outside the box thinking with your team. What kind of fun value adds are you toying with right now? Free pizza with purchase of house?
Yeah. We will do almost anything. I'm just kidding. Not anything, but we are very creative. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done a lot of really creative things to secure homes for our buyers. And I mean, I was just thinking about this the other day. I walked into a house one time in a more competitive market than we are in now, and the
Okay.
sellers were relocating due to being in the military. We're in a very military saturated community here,
Yeah.
and on their wall they had like this whiteboard, and on the whiteboard they had kind of a punch list of things that they wanted to do before they leave the Colorado area. And one of them was like a stay at the Broadmoor. The other one was have a night out at Top Golf. And so I remembered that and wrote that into the contract that we will pay for you to stay the night at the Broadmoor, and we will pay for you and a group of 8 of your friends to go and have fun at Top Golf,
That's so
just to
cool.
be more competitive and set ourselves apart from any other buyers, because in that market it was competitive. So we needed to. And the listing agent literally said, you guys are being accepted because of these things. So our offer was accepted because of that.
I
So
love it.
being a little bit more competitive, setting ourselves apart. I mean, offering to do things for the buyer. I mean, for the seller, we can offer a moving allowance, like where we will pay for your moving truck up to X amount of dollars, or we will pay for, I mean, we can get super creative. I could probably sit here and think of a few different things, but definitely getting more creative to help ensure that our offer is being accepted in any way, in any capacity. Commission is an easy one, though. I think it's really silly to me. I've always had an issue with this ever since I've been a real estate agent, that buyers will allow their agent to put language in a contract that says that what is being offered to them is not sufficient enough and that they deserve to be paid more commission. There has never been anything ever in the history of real estate that has ever said that anybody is entitled to X amount of commission for any reason. So in my mind, if my buyer picks a house and they fall in love with it and the seller is offering X commission, why would I tarnish my buyer's offer by saying I need to get paid more? To me, it's ridiculous.
I totally agree with that. And I have to be honest, I mean, and you know this to be fact, there's some agents who are amazing like yourself and your team, but there's a lot of buyer's agents for me have always been secret deal killers, right? They're playing this side where they're supposed to be co-op commission where you're working with the listing agent to get this thing figured out. But a lot of agents, through ego or whatever their reasons are, get in the habit of destroying deals. What I love about this commission restructuring is that it's really going to force agents to work together to get the deal done. Right. As opposed to working like I'm getting my fee no matter what, or I need to get paid more than I'm getting paid. That was the wrong attitude. I think it had a major tarnish on the industry. It's been around so long it became normal, but the future is really going to be about professionals wanting to work with professionals to get the desired outcome of getting the client the house that they want. You know, and I think that's going to be a big game changer for the future of real estate.
I think we need this in our industry as a real estate agent. I don't think that the general public is really going to feel what's happening that much because it's going to tighten and we're going to have more experienced professionals in the market to choose from, whether it be a listing agent or a buyer's agent. And so with that being said, obviously with experience, because things just kind of get steady, right? Because we're handling it. We're taking care of it. The buyers and the sellers aren't going to feel the impact at all. And I think we desperately have needed this.
I totally agree. I'm so excited for the future, what things are going to get. I do think it's going to be a better real estate landscape for buyers and sellers alike. Might be some cost savings on the part of the investor. Obviously, we're excited about making more money on each transaction, but we already got a rock star listing team at an incredible rate by working with you. So thank you so much for all that you do for the clientele. I'm excited about continuing to work with you and do a lot more deals. Any parting thoughts to the real estate community, to the clients, the people watching the show today? Anything you want to add?
I think the important thing to remember is as any change happens, there's always a really great advantage point. You know, it's not always negative. This is a really good thing that's happening for our community. And as long as we have that perspective, things will flourish. And the people who aren't able to cut it are already getting out of the business. And that's fine. We don't want them here. They can't handle it. So I'm really excited for the opportunity that this is presenting to everybody that's a part of real estate transactions, buyers, sellers, real estate agents, investors, everybody involved, because it really, there's a lot of benefit here. So
I agree. I think it's gonna be a better landscape in the future. Amy, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all that you do for the team. Super excited to have you here. We really appreciate it. Hey guys, you heard it. Agents change. The commission structure has changed. Okay, things are going to be a little bit different. Not necessarily better or worse, but definitely different. And now bringing on a top-level professional is going to come with people who can define their value to the community, provide more service and value, and just generally make this a better deal for all involved. So incredible opportunity if you're getting into investing to know that we've got a flat fee covered on the listing side, and then on the buy side, it's a huge opportunity to negotiate for that. Maybe pay less in commission so you've net more, but also you're going to be dealing with more professionals who are highly more likely to get the deal to the finish line. I just think it's an opportunity across the board. With that, this is Donnie Coram, your foreclosure deals coach. Thanking you so much for tuning into the show today and reminding you now and always, don't buy a house, buy a deal.